Step out of the car now. You don't understand who I am. Marcus Thompson froze. The flashing lights painted the street red and blue, but it wasn't just fire, it was disbelief. A decorated army surgeon trained to save lives now faced officers who saw him as a threat for no reason at all. Guns drawn. Accusations unspoken but clear. The balance of power had shifted violently, and his life hung by a thread. What led to this moment, and how did it spiral into a life-altering injustice? This is the shocking story of Marcus Thompson's near-death encounter and the reckoning that followed. Comment your city below. It was another bright morning at the U.S. Army Medical Facility. Dr. Marcus Thompson, a highly respected Black Army surgeon, moved through the corridors with quiet confidence. Every step he took was measured, every decision precise. His hands, trained to save lives under the harshest conditions, carried a calm authority that earned the respect of colleagues and patients alike. Outside the hospital, the city buzzed with the usual chaos, but inside, Marcus's world was orderly, a life built on discipline, dedication, and duty. Marcus lived a life of routine, waking before dawn to run through the quiet streets, his mind already rehearsing surgeries and patient rounds. Evenings were reserved for quiet reflection, reading medical journals, or calling his mother to check on her health. He had worked hard to earn every accolade, every rank, every nod of approval. His identity as a Black man in the military had never stopped him. If anything, it fueled his determination to prove his worth in a system that had historically overlooked people like him. Outside the hospital, the neighborhood hummed with everyday life. Children laughed on sidewalks, neighbors exchanged greetings. And life went on in the familiar rhythm Marcus had always taken comfort in. Yet beneath that surface, an undercurrent of unease always lingered, a tension he had learned to sense, subtle but persistent. A reminder that the world wasn't always fair, even his interactions with people outside. The military revealed micro moments of bias, the kind that were brushed off or ignored but never completely invisible. Marcus had developed a quiet resilience, a way of moving through life with awareness and caution. He knew that one misstep, one misunderstanding, could change everything in an instant. That day, he completed his rounds, said his goodbyes, and walked out toward the parking lot, the late morning sun warm on his shoulders. He felt the familiar mix of satisfaction and exhaustion that followed a successful surgery. He had no reason to suspect that mere minutes from now, a simple drive home, something he had done countless times, would become the moment that tested everything he had built, everything he believed about fairness and justice. Marcus slid into his car, the engine humming to life as he prepared for the short drive home. It was routine, mundane, even, but that day, the city felt different. The streets seemed sharper, the pedestrians' glances heavier, as though the air itself was charged. He drove slowly, observing the usual flow of traffic, oblivious to the black SUV idling just ahead. The first sign of trouble came when a pair of police officers pulled alongside him, their faces obscured behind dark sunglasses. Marcus's hands instinctively tightened on the wheel, but he remained calm. He had nothing to hide, no reason for alarm. Yet the officer's gaze lingered far too long. One of them leaned out slightly, voice clipped and demanding, "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus obeyed, heart steady, mind calculating every word he might say. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, keeping his tone respectful yet firm. The reply was sharp, dismissive, tinged with an aggression that needed no provocation. "Just answer a few questions." They circled his car, their movements deliberate, invasive. Marcus felt the first sting of anger, not at the law, but at the assumption, the unspoken judgment. Here he was, a decorated army surgeon, a man whose life had been dedicated to saving others, suddenly treated as a suspect for no reason other than the color of his skin. The officer's questions escalated quickly, accusations thinly veiled beneath procedural language. Marcus tried to remain calm, showing his military ID, explaining his day, his purpose, but nothing seemed to matter. One officer's hand hovered near his weapon, a silent, menacing reminder of the imbalance of power. Then, without warning, one officer lunged. Marcus froze, instinctive reactions kicking in. The world seemed to slow the metallic click of a gun, the sharp command to the ground. Fear surged through him not just for himself, but for the helpless bystanders watching from their cars and sidewalks. It was chaos condensed into seconds, a blur of aggression and disbelief. From the midst of the commotion, Janice, a janitor from the hospital, a kind-hearted woman who had always smiled at Marcus in the hallways, appeared, rushing toward him with frantic shouts. Her voice barely reached over the chaos, warning the officers of his identity, his service. But for a terrifying moment, it seemed irrelevant. Shots rang out. Marcus ducked instinctively, the world shaking around him. The familiar streets outside his car turning into a scene from a nightmare. The sound of gunfire and shouts intertwined, leaving only panic and confusion in their wake by the time the dust settled. Marcus was injured but alive, his life hanging by a thread. The officers froze, stunned by the reality of what they had done. And just as suddenly, the scene shifted from fear to the beginning of accountability, a twist that would change everything. For the men who had aimed their weapons, setting the stage for a reckoning never sought but would inevitably face, Marcus lay on the asphalt, blood seeping through his uniform, the world around him fractured into shouts, flashing lights, and the metallic temps of fear. Pain surged through his body, each breath a struggle. Yet his mind remained alert, racing through the impossible reality. He had devoted his life to saving others, and now, mere minutes from leaving work, his own life was under threat. The officers froze for a heartbeat, faces twisted with disbelief, the weight of what they had done crashing over them. Marcus's heart pounded not just with fear, but with anger, confusion, and a piercing sense of injustice. He had followed every rule, respected every authority. Yet here he was, injured and powerless, his life hanging by the thinnest of threads, from the chaos. Janice appeared again, her voice cutting through the commotion like a lifeline. She screamed his name, pointed to his army ID, pleaded with the officers to recognize the truth. Her courage ignited a spark, a shift in the atmosphere, forcing bystanders and fellow officers to truly see the man they had wronged as paramedics arrived. Lifting him gently into the ambulance, Marcus's gaze met the eyes of the officers, shame, fear, and the sudden realization of accountability reflected back at them. In that moment, Marcus understood the fragility of life and the destructive weight of prejudice, but also the power of truth and resilience. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Marcus survived that harrowing day, but the experience left an indelible mark on him. The bullet wounds healed, but the memory of that moment, the fear, the shock, the raw injustice lingered. A constant reminder of how fragile life could be when prejudice and power collide. His return to the hospital was met with overwhelming support. Colleagues, patients, and even strangers recognized the courage it took to survive not just the incident, but the weight of systemic bias that had made it possible. The officers who had aimed at him faced immediate consequences, their careers dismantled as swiftly as their assumptions had endangered a life. Justice, in this instance, was fast, but Marcus knew the broader battle was far from over. The story rippled through the community, sparking conversations about accountability, racial bias, and the urgent need for awareness in institutions that were supposed to protect, not harm. For Marcus, the ordeal reinforced the duality of his existence, a healer dedicated to saving lives, yet forced to navigate a world where his very presence could be misjudged. But he also discovered something more profound: the power of truth, courage, and solidarity. This wasn't just his story. It was the story of countless others whose lives are shaped by prejudice every day. It raises a pressing question for all of us. How many more lives must face danger before the world truly sees, understands, and acts? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.